Hey, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Gnostic Studies, and we'd like to do a lecture. We are on part 9 of our introduction to Gnostic psychology. And today we're going to talk about comprehension. We're coming to the end of this series. We've got one more class next week. And so now we want to understand comprehension. We talked about it in the previous class. It's another way of saying understanding, but it means in a deeper way, understanding in a deeper way. So we're going to go into it today. We're going to do a little bit of a review of the previous class, and then we'll jump into it. So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them into the comment box there. In the meantime, we are going to, knowledge, being, and understanding. So what we talked about in the previous class was the difference between knowledge and being. We understand that people have different levels of knowledge, but we don't understand that there's different levels of being. We could say there's different degrees of knowledge and different levels of being. So let's see, there's one thing that he says very interesting, scientist. Here it is. So we said the level of being can be different between a mineral and a plant, between a plant and an animal, between an animal and a human being. And then some people can differ more than between a mineral and an animal. Two people can differ. Their level of being can differ. Level of being is a very interesting concept. It's related to the horizontal line and the vertical line. It is actually directly related to the vertical line. So in life, we walk along the horizontal line. That means everything related to the physical world. Our source of income, our relationships, our physical organism, the food we eat, all those, just about everything, the personality, everything that people normally call life, without understanding the meaning of the word. But the horizontal line that intersects the vertical line from moment to moment, the vertical line, not the horizontal line. The horizontal line is day-to-day life. The vertical line is the one that from moment to moment exists there and is where we can change our level of being. We can choose to be different in the moment. So people do not understand that knowledge depends on being. And especially in Western culture, it is considered that a person may possess great knowledge. For example, they may be a very able scientist who makes discoveries, advances science, and at the same time, they may be, and we consider that they have the right to be, a petty, egotistical, mean, envious, vain, naive, and absent-minded person. And this is their level of being. So they may have knowledge, they may make advancements in their field, but they may also be a person who doesn't interact well with others. Not because they're nervous or because they're not accustomed to interacting with others, they're sort of accustomed to being alone, but because they have developed in themselves, for whatever reason, egos. And they strengthen those egos. In Western culture, we often put a great value on the level of a person's knowledge, but not on their level of being. And people are not even ashamed of their own low level of being. They don't even understand what it means. And they still don't understand that a person's knowledge depends on their level of being. So, level of being is the way that we be, the way that we are, the way that we interact, the way that we deal with situations. But it's really the way that we be, the way we are inside, how we're being. It sounds weird maybe to say the way that we be, but it's to sort of shake us up a little bit. The way we are. If in one moment a person comes in and they're dressed in a way that's trying to encourage emphasis on sexuality, our level of being can come out. What do we say? What do we do? What do we think? What do we do with our senses? Do we look? Do we look away? Do we, how do we handle it? What happens internally when we receive the impression of the way that they're dressed? It's going to be related to our level of being. It's sort of the starting point for how we interact with the world. But being is also going to be related to the experiences that we have in life. The different type of experiences that we have. We know better after we go through certain experiences how to handle related circumstances. I used the example of a person who reads about riding a skateboard in a magazine, reads articles about it, or reads a book about riding a skateboard. Or it could be the same thing, you watch videos about it. But you never have actually ridden a skateboard before. You never have touched a skateboard, or you've never stood on a skateboard. You might have knowledge of how to ride the skateboard, but you don't have being, you don't have experience of how to ride the skateboard. Once you get on the skateboard and you start practicing riding it, then you can apply the knowledge that you have. And then maybe you understand quicker how to ride the skateboard. But before you've gotten on the skateboard, before you have the experience, before you're interacting with the skateboard, you don't have any being related to it. Your level of being hasn't developed related to it. So when we understand something, when we understand, for example, how to ride a skateboard, it comes from knowledge. It could be what somebody said to us, could be what we've extracted from our experience, but it has to also have experience with it. Understanding comes from knowledge and being together. Both the information that I read or studied, or what somebody told me, or the videos that I watched, and the experience that I have with the skateboard. Understanding comes from both being and knowledge. And in fact, understanding does not go any higher than whatever the mutual level of knowledge and being is. You could have a lot of knowledge, but understanding is only as high as your being is in that given sphere or realm. And the opposite is also true. You could have a lot of experiences, a lot of being, but you have very little knowledge. And so your understanding is still only as high as your knowledge in that case. Only as high as whatever the evenness is between knowledge and being. This is sort of an abstract way of talking about things, but hopefully it makes sense. The point of studying this is to understand that we need to reflect on our level of being. Many times when we're meditating, we can receive information, and that can be an experience that we receive. And that can put the pieces together. That can be to change our level of being, for us to understand now, because it combines with the knowledge we already have. Or we can receive knowledge during meditation, and it can combine with the experience that we already have, and therefore we can understand better. In today's class, comprehension, that's what we want to emphasize. The need to have understanding. So we do not want an imbalance of knowledge and being. We need knowledge and being to grow together. So let's jump into today's class then. Comprehension. So comprehension is just another way of saying understanding, but we use it in Gnosis to emphasize the idea of a deep understanding about something specific. We've been talking about the personality. We brought it up related with our particular psychology in part 5. Then when we talked about essence and personality, we made a differentiation between that spark of divinity, the essence within us, and the personality, which is something related to culture, the time period. It's related to our physical organism. And then we said that we need to, if we want the essence to develop, we need to make the personality passive in order to make the essence active. That spark of divinity now needs to be active. And that requires working through what's in personality, which are egos, many mechanical things. Maybe not all or everything, but a lot. A lot of mechanics, a lot of imitation of people around us, things we've seen in media. And so we need to differentiate between personality and essence. And in Gnosis we consider ourselves to be essence, not personality. So if we want to develop personality, then Gnosis is not for us. If we want to develop essence, then we need to make the personality passive. Understand the personality as a tool to interact with the culture, because people are nervous about things, they're uncomfortable, they need some security. Unfortunately, because when we have security in the divinity, in our inner divinity, in our relationship with God, then we seek less for security in the physical world. So people find security in their personality. And in Gnosis we want to find it related with our essence, and the essence's relationship with the being, the inner divinity. So now we're going to talk about the Kalkian personality, or false personality. This is from Revolution of the Dialectic. So we're going to kind of keep going on the same topic, adding some more. We have to become more and more conscious each time of the work we're carrying out upon ourselves. Right? Let's remember that no one else can do this work for us. We discussed this in part 4. We have to do the work. We have to become more and more conscious each time of the work that we are carrying out upon ourselves. We must get to know, to be able to comprehend, that the human being is divided into two consciousnesses, the true and the false. When one comes to this world, one brings within the essence all the data deposited therein by nature that one needs for the inner self-realization of the being. But what happens? One is put into schools where one receives a false education, including lots of advice and rules which serve no purpose. Right? Just like the false personality, in the end, we waste a lot of energy with it. Culture can be looked at in that way as well. There's a lot of things where we waste energy. A lot of advice, rules, which serve no purpose. And we're talking about Gnostic purpose. They might serve purpose for our social status or economic status or something like that. But do they serve a purpose for the development of the essence, for the development of our relationship with God. In the end, one creates a false consciousness, and the true consciousness, with the deposited data therein, which one needs to follow step by step in order to walk the path, in order to arrive at the liberation of the being, remains at the bottom, sadly categorized with the name of subconsciousness. We have to become sincere with ourselves, to recognize that our false consciousness is the one which they have formed for us, the one which was created with all their theories learned in elementary or primary and secondary schools, in college, etc., and through so many other ways, such as with the examples of our elders and the prejudices of this society in which we live. Therefore, it is not the true consciousness. We must eliminate everything we have of false within us. That false consciousness, which is the foundation that we have been given in the rules from school, in the preparatory lessons, etc. We must completely eliminate, definitively eradicate that false consciousness which is based on what we have been told, so that only the true consciousness, the superlative consciousness of the being, remains within us. That is what matters. Inner development is only achieved by endeavoring to throw the false consciousness into the trash and pay attention to the true consciousness, the authentic consciousness. What do we mean by false consciousness? That which they have formed for us from the time we were born, that which was created with examples, with the precepts of all our relatives, that which they formed for us in elementary or primary school, in secondary school, etc., that which was formed with all the social prejudices that exist and continue to exist. We have to throw all of that into the bottom of the trash and cause the true consciousness to come to the surface in order for it to work. This indicates that one must become a child in order to work, to become an infant, a baby, at the moment of working, stripped of theories and putting true wisdom into play. In this manner, we recognize the situation we are in, so that we can understand that we do not march on the path of all those little schools, sects, and orders which form the Kalkian or false personality, that we are different, and what this entails. In all creatures, the normal growth of the essence is insufficient. The human being grows and develops in accordance with the biological laws of the species, but the possibilities for the growth and development of the essence are extremely limited. Unquestionably, without help, the essence can only grow to a small degree. The spontaneous and natural growth of the essence is only possible during the first 3, 4, and 5 years of life, during the first phase of life. People think that the growth and development of the essence always occurs in a continuous way, according to the mechanics of evolution. But universal Gnosticism teaches clearly that it does not occur in that way. Instead, something very special must happen. Something new must be carried out so that the essence may grow more. And this is the work upon oneself. The development of the essence is only possible on the basis of conscious works and voluntary sufferings. Learning how to sacrifice. Of course, as you know, we studied Gnosis, which teaches that all religions have the same fundamental principles. And those principles are related to sacrifice. We mentioned at the beginning of the series that the universe is an exchange of energies. We have to learn to give certain things up, like, let's say, the personality. And then we may be able to receive something new related with the essence. But we have to do this consciously, voluntarily. It cannot happen just because someone forces us to do it. It is necessary to comprehend that this work does not refer to professional issues, such as banking, carpentry, masonry, railroad repairs, or office matters. This work is for any person who has already developed their personality. It deals with something psychological. We all know that we have within ourselves that which is called ego, I, myself, me, oneself. Unfortunately, the essence is completely imprisoned or absorbed inside of this thing we call I, me, myself, ego. To dissolve the psychological I, the ego, to disintegrate one's undesirable elements, is urgent, unavoidable, and cannot be postponed. This is the meaning of the work upon oneself. We would never be able to liberate the essence without previously disintegrating the psychological I, the ego. Within the essence is the Buddha, wisdom, the particles of our Father who dwells in heaven, and it has all the information we need for the intimate self-realization of our own being. No one would be able to annihilate the psychological I, the ego, without previously eliminating the inhuman elements which we carry within ourselves. We need to reduce the monstrous cruelty of these times to ashes. The envy which has unfortunately become the secret trigger for so many actions. The unbearable greed or covetousness that has made life so bitter. The disgusting slander, the defamation which gives rise to so many tragedies, the drunkenness, the filthy lust, etc. Accordingly, as all these abominations are being reduced to cosmic dust, the essence, besides becoming emancipated, will grow and develop harmoniously. Unquestionably, when our ego, our psychological I, has died, then the essence shines within us. The liberated essence confers intimate beauty upon us. Perfect happiness and true love emanate from this beauty. The essence possesses multiple senses of perfection and extraordinary natural powers. When we die within ourselves, when we disintegrate the psychological I, we can then enjoy the precious senses and powers of the essence. It is urgent to know that this psychological I is a mass of psychic energies, which has also been called Loose Cathexis. They reproduce themselves in the lower animal depths of the human being. The beloved ego does not have any individuality. It is a sum of factors which are disharmonious, a sum of small loose cathexis, or we could also call them egotistical psychic energies. Each small I, of those which constitute the legion we call ego, really has its own personal criteria, its own projects, its own ideas, its own rhetoric. Each loose cathexis is a small I or ego which enjoys certain self-independence. These I's, these loose cathexis, struggle amongst themselves. I should read the latest news, or get the latest news on our phones, right? Says the intellectual I. I would prefer to ride a bike or exercise, argues the motor I. I am hungry, declares the I of digestion. I am cold, says the I of metabolism. No one will impede me, exclaims the passionate I, in defense of any of these loose cathexis. Conclusion? The I, the ego, is a legion of loose cathexis. They dwell in the lower animal depths of the human being. They eat, sleep, reproduce, and live at the expense of our own vital principles. They eat, sleep, and reproduce, and live at the expense of our own vital principles, which are also called the free cathexis, muscular and nervous kinetic energy. Each of the egos, which in their mass constitute the loose cathexis, the I, project themselves in different levels of the mind, longing for satisfaction, for the satisfaction of their desires. So, right, if we're observing ourselves and we see something in the mind, some desires, we can understand that maybe the desires of an ego that we have within, projecting those into our own mind. The human being is the city of 9 gates. Within this city live many citizens who do not even know each other. Each of these citizens, each of those small I's or egos, has its own project and even its own mind. These are the merchants which Jesus cast out of the temple with the whip of willpower. Those merchants should be eliminated. As long as the loose cathexis exists, there can be no peace. Now we will understand the reason for so many internal contradictions in the individual. The I's, the egos, are the cause of all internal contradictions. The human being is an irresponsible being that does not have a permanent center of gravity. The human being is a being which is not yet attained. Human beings are not yet true beings. They are merely intellectual animals. It is a great error to call the legion of the I soul. Really and truly, human beings have within their essence the psychic material, the material to create soul, but they do not yet have a soul. The gospel says, of what use is it to win the world if you're going to lose your soul? Jesus said to Nicodemus that it was necessary to be born from water and the Spirit in order to enjoy the attributes which correspond to a true soul. It is impossible to create the soul if we do not undergo mystical death. It is only through the death of the I that we can establish a permanent center of consciousness within our own interior essence. The permanent center of consciousness is the soul. Only a human being with a soul can have true continuity of purpose. It is only in a human being with a soul that internal contradictions do not exist, and that there is true inner peace. The I, the ego, foolishly spends the psychic material, the cathexis, in explosions of anger, covetousness, or greed, lust, envy, pride, laziness, gluttony, etc. It is logical that as long as the psychic material, the cathexis, does not accumulate, the soul cannot be created. When the I, the ego, begins to die, then the psychic material begins to accumulate. When the psychic material begins to accumulate, then the establishment of a permanent center of consciousness begins. When the I has absolutely died, the permanent center of consciousness remains totally established. The capital of psychic material accumulates when the ego dies, since the squanderer of energy is eliminated. We have to eliminate the squanderer of energy, the ego, the one who wastes our energy, our psychic material, our vital principles. In this manner, the permanent center of consciousness, the soul, is established. Mystical death is an arduous and difficult area of the Gnostic esoteric work. We're talking about psychological death, the death of the ego, to comprehend and eliminate an ego. This class is comprehension, and the last class is elimination. So we're going to study how Gnosis explains to do that process. The Loose Cathexis is dissolved on the basis of rigorous comprehension. Interaction with our fellow human beings, dealing with people, is the mirror where we can see ourselves at full length. In dealing with people, our hidden defects leap forward, they flourish, and if we're truly vigilant, if we're observing ourselves, then we see them. Right? We're talking about self-observation. Every defect should first be intellectually analyzed and then studied with meditation. When a defect is totally comprehended in all the levels of the mind, its corresponding loose cathexis disintegrates. In other words, a small I, or ego, dies. It is urgent to die from instant to instant. The soul is born with the death of the I. We need the death of the I in a complete way in order for the plenitude of the bound cathexis, our being, our inner divinity, to express itself. It is only by minutely studying the loose cathexis, the I, the ego, that we can totally dissolve it. We should minutely observe the thought processes, the different aspects of desire, the habits which form our personality. The sophisms of distraction, which is another section in chapter 1 of the book. It's how we distract ourselves from doing the work. The fallacy of the ego, and even in our own sexual impulses. We have to study how our egos react before the impact of the exterior world, and see how they associate with each other in our interior world. This is really extremely useful sentence when we're working on ourselves. Because what happens is we receive a lot of information if we're observing ourselves through what we discover interacting with our fellow human beings when we have some impressions, right? Something comes in through the eyes, we hear something, we smell something, we taste something, and then what do the egos do in the interior of us? So that information enters in through our senses. And then what happens when it goes inside? What are the associations that we have? Do we associate that with when we were a child? Is that why we like, let's say, fruit juice or orange juice or tea or coffee? Something when we were a child? Or is it something when we're an adult? What is the association? When did that start? Why does that exist? That's really what we want to understand. Why do these things exist within ourselves? Why are we angry? Why are we sad? Why are we happy? Why are we overjoyed? Why are we afraid? Why are we greedy? Why are we lazy? We can find all these things out. But we have to study those processes, the exchanges. Remember, the merchants, they do transactions within us. Oh, well, if you work out, then you can eat a bunch of ice cream and watch TV. Oh, okay. That's a rhetoric of the ego, as an example. By comprehending all the processes of the loose cathexis, of the ego, of the pluralized I, we can dissolve it. Then only the divinity is manifest through us and within us. In trying to comprehend any kind of psychological defect in depth, we have to be honest with ourselves. And my previous instructor used to say, if we go to work on an ego in meditation, and we didn't find ourselves in some way responsible, then we didn't meditate. We just listened to the ego, right? Let's say today somebody did something driving, and I got upset, and I honked the horn, or I, did whatever silly thing we do. If I say, well, if they hadn't pulled out in front of me, if I go to meditate on the ego, what happened in that external event? What was going on? I go to meditate and I say, well, they pulled out in front of me, they deserve to be honked at. And that means I wasn't really meditating. I was just listening to the ego explain and justify itself. If I went in and meditated, I would find the ego of, let's say, entitlement. Entitlement that I don't think they should be able to drive in whatever way they were driving in front of me, right? That's sort of like entitlement, arrogance. That's what we can work on. We can't work on them. We can't work on the other person. We can work on ourselves. Those are the egos that we can comprehend. Where did that come from? Why do I feel entitled to honk at people and tell them how to drive? Where does that come from? When did it first start within me? Maybe I learned it from my parents. Maybe I learned it from watching movies, the media, right? Or videos on the internet. Maybe I learned it from watching my friends drive, or somebody that somebody older in school who I wanted to be like, who I wanted to imitate. That's where we have to we sit there in meditation and we ask, where did it come from? Why does it exist? What does it remind me of? Then we see the associations. They'll come up for us. Memories. They'll come up for us. And then we work through that. We pray, working with our Divine Mother, because she's the one, and we'll talk more about her in the next class, that assists us with this process of comprehension and elimination. But the fundamental thing is, we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to take some kind of responsibility. Because otherwise, we're just blaming everybody else. That's not the work on ourselves. That's not eliminating my own egos, comprehending and eliminating them. That's not finding any egos inside myself. That's fortifying them, justifying them. We should be sincere with our own selves and dissect the I with the tremendous scalpel of self-criticism. And a sort of a tip, if you're having difficulty finding yourself responsible, is just ask, what did I do to contribute to the situation? How did I react? What did I say? Maybe I could have said nothing instead of saying something. Maybe I could have said something different. But what I said, why did I say it? And what was I letting an ego speak through me? Unfortunately, what happens is Pontius Pilate, the demon of the mind, always washes his hands, is never guilty, and never recognizes his errors. But to comprehend, we must recognize our own mistakes, without self-justification, without excuses, and without any kind of evasion. We have to take responsibility. Self-exploration is essential for profound self-knowledge, and so is starting from a foundation of radical zero. Our interior Pharisee is an obstacle to comprehension. To presume that we are virtuous is absurd. To judge others and label them as evil is also absurd, because all human beings, as long as they have not dissolved the pluralized ego, are more or less evil. Intimate self-exploration is certainly something to be taken very seriously. The ego is, in reality, a book of many volumes. Full attention, natural and spontaneous, on whatever we're interested in, without artificialities, is truly perfect concentration. Any error is multifaceted and inevitably operates in the subconscious. So we want to direct our attention to the interior when we're meditating, when we're trying to comprehend these errors, and ask through prayer our inner divinity for assistance, comprehending and eliminating these egos, and understand that they may be multifaceted. Any intimate defect has diverse links and roots, which have to be studied judiciously. Self-revelation is possible when there is integral comprehension of the defect that we sincerely want to eliminate. New self-determinations spring up from the consciousness when comprehension is complete. Superlative analysis is useful if it is combined with deep meditation. Then the flame of comprehension surges forth. The dissolution of all those psychic aggregates which constitute the ego is increased if we know how to take maximum advantage of the worst adversities. The difficult psychological gymnasiums in the home, in the streets, or at work always offer us the best opportunities to see those egos that wouldn't normally come out, that are deep down, so that we can comprehend and eliminate them. To covet virtues is absurd. It is better to make radical changes. Control of intimate defects is superficial and condemned to failure. Deep change is fundamental, and it is possible only by integrally comprehending every error. By eliminating the psychic aggregates that constitute the myself, the one-self, we establish proper foundations for correct action in our consciousness. Superficial changes serve no purpose. We urgently need in-depth change. Comprehension is the first step, and elimination is the second. The I, the ego, exerts control upon the 5 inferior centers of the human machine. These are the intellectual, emotional, motor, instinctive, and sexual. However, the I or ego cannot control the 2 superior centers of the human being, which are the superior mind, or superior intellect, and superior emotions. If we want to dissolve the I, the ego, then we must study it in the 5 inferior centers. we need comprehension. It is urgent to comprehend the actions and reactions of each one of the 5 inferior centers of the human machine. The I exerts control over these inferior centers. Therefore, we walk on the path of the dissolution of the I with in-depth comprehension. Comprehension of the activity of each one of these inferior centers. How do the centers work? So understand now that we need to observe the centers. And even if the event has already passed, we can take it to meditation and observe and see which center was working, which ego was in which center. Two people react differently before any given representation. What is pleasant for one person could be unpleasant for another. The difference lies in the fact that one person judges and perceives the representation with the mind, and the other is touched in their feelings. Therefore, we must learn how to differentiate the mind from the feelings. The mind is one thing, and feelings are another. Within the mind, there exists an entire game of actions and reactions that must be carefully comprehended. Within our feelings, there are affections that must be crucified, emotions that must be studied, and an entire mechanism of actions and reactions that can easily be misplaced or confused with the activities of the mind. We discover the entire process of the I by comprehending the inner activities of each one of the 5 inferior centers. So comprehension is discovering the truth in the subject, object, in whatever problem, defect, ego, etc. that we're working on. So what we're trying to comprehend when we're trying to comprehend a defect, what we're trying to access is the truth, what's really going on. So obviously this is related with the meditation, and people think that in order to meditate we need to exert ourselves, but actually we need to do the opposite. We need to relax and allow our superior mind and superior emotions to work, because we can receive information directly through them, and the ego cannot operate there. This is why we recommend meditation on a regular basis, and why we do meditation practices on Friday nights, and we invite you to join us tomorrow for a practice at the same time as we started this class. In order to experience the truth, one does not need any effort whatsoever. People are accustomed to exerting themselves and exerting effort in everything that they do, and suppose that it is impossible to experience the truth without any kind of effort. We may need effort to earn our daily bread, to play a game of football or soccer, or to carry a very heavy load, but it is absurd to believe that effort is necessary in order to experience that which is the truth. Comprehension replaces effort when one tries to comprehend the truth, intimately hidden in the secret depth of each problem. We do not need any effort to comprehend each and all of the defects that we carry hidden in the different levels of the mind. We do not need effort to comprehend that envy is one of the most powerful triggers of social machinery. There are persons who want to cease being covetousness, but who covet not being covetous. There you have a form of covetousness. There are men who exert themselves in order to attain the virtue of chastity, but when they see a beautiful woman on the street, they pay her some beautiful compliments. And if the woman is a friend, then they can do nothing less than ply her with attention, say beautiful words to her, admire her, praise her beautiful qualities, etc. The secret intentions behind all of that flirting is found in subconscious and submerged lust. When we comprehend, without any effort, all the tricks of lust, then lust can be annihilated, and in its place is born the immaculate flower of chastity. It is not with any effort that we can acquire virtues. The I is fortified when it exerts itself to acquire virtues. The I or ego loves decorations, medals, titles, honors, virtues, beautiful qualities, etc. Humility is a very exotic flower. Whosoever boasts of humility is full of pride. In practical life, we make many useless efforts whenever a new problem torments us. We appeal to efforts in order to solve it. We struggle and suffer, but then the only thing we obtain is the complication of our existence. The disillusioned, the disenchanted, those who no longer even want to think, those who were not able to solve a vital problem, find the solution when their mind is serene and tranquil, when they had no hope whatsoever. No truth can be comprehended by means of effort. The truth comes like a thief in the night, when one least expects it. Sensory perceptions during meditation, illumination, the solution to a problem, are only possible when no kind of conscious or subconscious effort exists, when the mind does not exert itself to be more than it is. Pride also disguises itself as being sublime. The mind exerts itself to become something more than it is. The mind, serene like a lake, can experience the truth. But when the mind wants to be something more, it is in tension, it is in a struggle, and then the experience of the truth becomes impossible. We should not mistake the truth with opinions. Many think that the truth is this or that, or that the truth is in this or that book, or in this or that belief or idea, etc. The one who wants to experience the truth should not mistake beliefs, ideas, opinions, and theories with what is called the truth, or what is the truth. We should experience the truth in a direct, practical, and real manner. This is only possible in the stillness and silence of the mind, and this is achieved by meditation, by means of meditation. To experience the truth is fundamental. It is not by means of effort that we can experience the truth. The truth is not the result, nor is it the truth the product of effort. The truth comes to us by means of profound comprehension. We need effort to work in the great work, effort to transmute our creative energies, effort to live, struggle, and tread the path of the integral revolution. But we do not need effort to comprehend the truth. So there's many techniques that we mentioned to you guys before in order to quiet the mind. Doing mantras, doing koans, pranayama. We can exercise and then go to meditate afterwards. There is some good quality green tea that also can help quiet the mind. It has amino acid called L-theanine in it. Doing exercise, esoteric exercises, Lamaseria exercises, Qigong, Tai Chi, runes. So hopefully the pieces are starting to come together to understand that in order for us to eliminate the ego, we need to comprehend it. That is, we need to access the truth related with it. I might think that it's, inappropriate to drive in a such and such a way, but the truth is that somebody told me that, or that's a belief that I have. We need to allow others to have their free will. We need to differentiate between I dislike when people drive this way, or I like when people drive this way, and the truth. Opinions, beliefs, ideas, theories are not the truth. The truth is the truth, regardless of what anybody thinks. But let's differentiate between prejudices, opinions, and the truth. And so that's what we're trying to discover when we're working on an ego. A mistaken perspective, a falsity, something that's incorrect within us. Incorrect in the objective sense, not in the subjective sense. So we want to open it up for questions and comments now. If you guys have any, please feel free to submit them in the comment box. We are on the 9th class, Comprehension and the Necessity to Liberate the Essence, right? Because the only way we can liberate the essence is through the elimination of our defects. Because then the squanderer of energy stops. In the next class, part 10, we're going to talk more about how we work with that psychic material and a technique that we can use to help create our soul, to help liberate the essence related with our creative energy. But in order for us to eliminate an ego, we need to comprehend it. We need to extract the truth from it. And remember, that means understanding. We need to understand it. And understanding comes to us from being and knowledge. And that's where meditation helps us a lot. Because meditation allows us to receive those experiences. You can, I would say, let him go out there if there's something to bark at. Meditation gives us those experiences that we need to comprehend something, and it gives us the knowledge that we need. It can fill in those gaps so that we can understand, so that we can comprehend, so that we can comprehend and extract the truth from within those defects, from within those experiences, those external events, the things that happened that we're trying to really understand. So it doesn't look like there's any questions. There's a thank you, and you're welcome, but I will say that it's certainly the being is the one that's participating in this and that provides us with this information and shows us this, and so that's the real author of this material, of these things, is the inner divinity that exists in each one of us. So we want to invite you to meditation next week, and meditation tomorrow, and well, we're going to do meditation next week. That's the plan. And so meditation tomorrow, if you're interested, same time. And the last class next week Thursday in Northern Hemisphere. And in the meantime, we hope you guys have a good esoteric work, good day, good evening, good weekend, and we wish you the best in your esoteric internal work.